Trent, it wasn't what you think.
Mira, the cameras don't lie, and you do.
The notification pinged on my phone at 11:47 p.m., just as I was settling into bed with a lukewarm beer and the remote. Security alert. Front door motion detected. I figured it was probably that stray cat again, the one that kept triggering our new system. But something made me check anyway. I'm Trent Ardell, and I've been installing security systems for 12 years. When our neighborhood got hit with a string of break-ins last month, I finally decided to wire up our own place. Nothing fancy, just a basic setup with cameras covering the entrances and a mobile app that lets me monitor everything from my phone. What I saw on that grainy night vision footage made my stomach drop like a stone. My wife Mira stumbled through our front door, giggling like a teenager, wrapped around some guy I recognized from her law firm's Christmas party. Jace Arnell, the smooth-talking business consultant who always seemed to find excuses to chat with the married women at office events. "Working late again, honey," she'd texted me 3 hours earlier. "Don't wait up." I watched them fumble with the lock, watched her lean into him, watched them disappear into our living room. The timestamp showed they stayed for exactly 43 minutes before leaving together through the back door, careful to avoid the streetlights. I sat there in our bedroom, staring at the phone screen long after it had gone dark, listening to the house creak around me. Mira wouldn't be home until morning. She never was on her late work nights anymore. That's when I remembered something important about our security system. Something I'd forgotten to mention to my wife when I installed it last month. The cameras don't just record when motion is detected. They record everything, 24 hours a day, and store it all on a cloud server for 90 days. I opened the app again and started scrolling back through the archived footage. 1 week ago, Mira and Jace, 10:30 p.m. 2 weeks ago, same time, same routine. 3 weeks ago, there they were again. I counted 12 separate occasions over the past month. 12 times my wife had brought her lover into our home while I was working night shifts at the warehouse, thinking she was putting in extra hours to make partner at her firm. Mrs. Lacey from next door had mentioned seeing visitors a few times, but I'd brushed it off. Now I realized she'd been trying to tell me something I was too trusting to understand. I spent the rest of that sleepless night going through the footage, taking screenshots, making notes. By dawn, I had a timeline that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. Not that I planned to involve the courts. No, what I had in mind was much more personal. Mira came home at 6:30 a.m., showered, and made coffee like nothing had happened. She even kissed my cheek and asked about my evening. "Quiet night," I told her, watching her face for any sign of guilt. "Just watched some TV and went to bed early." She nodded, already checking her phone for messages. Good. I was so exhausted after that client meeting. Sometimes I think Jace and I are the only ones at the firm who really care about getting results. The casual way she said his name, the little smile that played at the corners of her mouth. It took everything I had not to grab her shoulders and shake her until she confessed. Instead, I poured myself more coffee and started planning. You see, most people think revenge is about anger. They're wrong. Real revenge is about patience, preparation, and knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. And after 15 years of marriage, I knew Mira's weaknesses like a mechanic knows engine trouble. She cared about 3 things above all else: her reputation, her career, and her image in our tight-knit community. She'd built her entire identity around being the successful lawyer married to the dependable blue-collar guy, the power couple who'd made it work despite coming from different worlds. What she didn't realize was that her dependable husband had just become her worst nightmare. I called in sick to work that morning and drove to Beck Darren's shop. Beck had helped me install the security system, and more importantly, he owed me a favor from when I'd helped him through his messy separation last year. He was also the only person I knew who understood both technology and the art of making people's lives complicated. "I need an upgrade to my home system," I told him, sliding an envelope full of cash across his cluttered desk. "Something more comprehensive." Beck raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask questions. He never did. That's why we'd been friends since high school. How comprehensive are we talking? I want to know everything that happens in my house, my yard, and my driveway. Audio, video, motion sensors, the works. And I want it all backed up to multiple servers with automatic uploads. That's going to be expensive, Trent. I've got money saved up. Consider it an investment in my future happiness. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. 2 days later, Beck had transformed our modest suburban home into a surveillance fortress. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors, audio pickups disguised as electrical outlets, motion sensors that could detect a mouse crossing the kitchen floor. All of it connected to a central hub in my basement workshop, with redundant backups uploading to 3 different cloud services. Mira never noticed the upgrades. She was too busy with her late nights at the office to pay attention to minor changes around the house. The new system captured everything. Their whispered conversations about me. Her complaints about our marriage, our finances, our intimate life. His promises to take her away from all this once his divorce was finalized. The way they laughed about my trusting nature, calling me sweet but clueless. That last part stung more than I expected, but it also gave me something valuable. Motivation. I spent the next week studying them like a scientist observing lab rats. I learned their patterns, their habits, their fears. Jace was worried about his reputation at the consulting firm where he worked. Mira was terrified that her affair might derail her chances of making partner. Both of them were obsessed with maintaining their public images. Perfect. I could work with that. The first move was subtle. I started showing up at places where I knew they'd be together. The coffee shop near Mira's office, the upscale bar where they met for drinks, the parking garage where Jace kept his BMW. I never confronted them directly. I just made sure they saw me, made sure they knew I was around. A wave from across the street. A friendly nod in a restaurant. Nothing threatening, nothing they could complain about. Just the uncomfortable presence of an inconvenient husband. It didn't take long for the paranoia to set in. "You've been going out a lot lately," Mira mentioned one evening, trying to sound casual. "Mrs. Lacey said she saw you downtown yesterday afternoon." "Just running errands," I replied, not looking up from my newspaper. "You know how it is. Lots to do, lots of places to be." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Good. Worry was the first ingredient in my recipe for revenge. The second ingredient was information, and I was gathering plenty of that. 3 weeks into my surveillance operation, I had enough material to destroy both of them 10 times over. But I wasn't interested in quick destruction. I wanted to watch them unravel slowly, methodically, completely. The beauty of modern technology is that people document their own downfall. Mira's phone automatically backed up her photos to our shared family cloud account, photos she thought I never checked. Jace's social media posts painted a picture of a man living beyond his means, desperately trying to maintain an image of success while his consulting business struggled. I started making copies of everything. Screenshots, audio files, financial records that Mira left scattered around her home office. She was careless with paperwork, always had been. Now that carelessness was going to cost her. But I needed help, and I knew exactly who to call. Felix Rourde had been practicing law in our town for 30 years. He'd handled my father's estate, helped me navigate some business licensing issues, and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when his clients needed him to be. More importantly, he despised cheating spouses and had built a side practice around making their lives miserable through perfectly legal means. "Trent," he said when I walked into his office, "you look like a man with problems." "Not problems, Felix. Opportunities." I laid out everything I had discovered, showed him the evidence, explained my situation. Felix listened without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is quite a collection," he said finally. Your wife has been very foolish, and her boyfriend even more so. What exactly do you want from me? I want them ruined, but I want it done legally, systematically, and permanently. No quick fixes, no dramatic confrontations. I want them to lose everything that matters to them, piece by piece, until they understand exactly what they've thrown away. Felix smiled for the first time since I'd entered his office. Now you're speaking my language. We spent the next 2 hours planning what Felix called the campaign. Phase 1 would target their professional lives. Phase 2 would destroy their social standing. Phase 3 would eliminate their financial security. All of it legal, all of it documented, all of it irreversible. This is going to take time, Felix warned me. Months, maybe longer. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for this my entire marriage. The first strike came a week later. Felix had a contact at the State Bar Association, someone who took ethics violations very seriously. An anonymous complaint was filed against Mira, alleging that she was using firm resources for personal matters and maintaining inappropriate relationships with clients. The complaint was carefully worded, technically accurate, and impossible to trace back to me. It triggered an automatic investigation that would require Mira to account for her time, her expenses, and her professional conduct over the past 6 months. Meanwhile, I was working on Jace through different channels. Beck had helped me research his business, and what we found was fascinating. Jace's consulting firm was basically a one-man operation that existed primarily on paper. He had 3 clients, all of them small businesses owned by friends who were essentially paying him to do nothing. More interesting was his financial situation. Despite the expensive car and designer clothes, Jace was living paycheck to paycheck. His divorce had been costly, his business was failing, and he was behind on rent for both his office and his apartment. I started making anonymous phone calls to his creditors, asking innocent questions about payment schedules and account statuses. Nothing illegal, just the kind of inquiries that make nervous businesses start demanding immediate payment from delinquent customers. Within 2 weeks, Jace was fielding calls from lawyers, landlords, and loan officers. His carefully constructed facade of success was cracking under financial pressure. But the real masterpiece was still to come. I had noticed that Mira and Jace were getting careless. The thrill of sneaking around was wearing off, and they were taking bigger risks. They'd started meeting at his apartment, spending entire afternoons together while I was supposedly at work. What they didn't know was that I'd been taking vacation days, following them, documenting everything. I knew which restaurants they frequented, which hotels they used, which back roads they took to avoid being seen. More importantly, I knew that Jace's apartment building had security cameras in the lobby and parking garage. Cameras that recorded everyone who entered and left, with timestamps that would be very difficult to explain away. I made friends with the building's maintenance supervisor, a guy named Tommy, who appreciated good bourbon and better conversation. After a few drinks at the local bar, Tommy mentioned how easy it would be for someone to request copies of security footage if they had a legitimate reason. Like if someone was trying to serve legal papers, I suggested. Exactly. Or if there was some kind of insurance claim or property dispute. Management keeps everything for 6 months just in case. I filed that information away for future use. Meanwhile, the pressure was building on both of them. Mira was spending more time at work, trying to address the Bar Association investigation. Jace was scrambling to find new clients and pay his mounting debts. Their romantic afternoons were becoming hurried, stressful encounters. Perfect. Stress makes people stupid, and stupid people make mistakes. The mistake came on a Tuesday afternoon in November. I was monitoring the house cameras from my phone while supposedly working a double shift at the warehouse. Mira and Jace arrived at 2:30, clearly agitated about something. The audio pickup in our living room captured their entire conversation. "This investigation is getting serious," Mira was saying. "They want to review all my case files, my billing records, everything." "Can they prove anything?" Jace asked. "Not if we're careful. But Trent's been acting strange lately. Yesterday he asked me about my work schedule, wanted to know why I've been staying late so much. You think he suspects something? I don't know. Maybe. He's not as stupid as we thought. That last comment hit me like a physical blow. Not as stupid as they thought. I sat in my truck outside the warehouse, listening to them discuss my intelligence like I was some kind of pet they'd underestimated. We should be more careful, Mira continued. Maybe take a break until this investigation is over. I can't take a break, Jace replied. You're the only good thing in my life right now. Everything else is falling apart. What do you mean? My business is finished. I'm 3 months behind on rent. My car's about to be repossessed, and my ex-wife is threatening to take me back to court for more alimony. If I didn't have you, we'll figure something out, Mira said. Maybe I could help with some of your expenses. With what money? You said yourself that Trent controls all the household accounts. There are ways around that. I've been thinking about opening my own account, something he doesn't know about. I stopped the recording and sat there for a long time, processing what I'd just heard. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning to steal from me to finance their relationship. That changed everything. I called Felix immediately. We're moving to phase 2, I told him. I want them destroyed, and I want it to happen fast. What's changed? I played him the recording. When it finished, Felix was quiet for a long moment. Well, he said finally, that was remarkably stupid of them. Financial fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, discussing criminal activity in detail. Trent, they've just handed us everything we need to bury them. How long will it take? Give me 2 weeks. By Thanksgiving, they'll have plenty to be grateful for, like the fact that they're not in prison. Felix moved fast. Within 3 days, he had filed for a temporary restraining order against Mira, citing financial misconduct and potential theft. The order froze all our joint accounts and required her to account for every penny she'd spent in the past 6 months. The legal papers were served at her office on a Friday afternoon in front of her colleagues and clients. Mira called me immediately, her voice shaking with rage and panic. What the hell is this, Trent? A restraining order? Financial misconduct? Have you lost your mind? I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly. I'm at work. What's wrong? Don't play dumb with me. You know exactly what's wrong. Mira, you're not making sense. Why don't you come home and we'll talk about whatever's bothering you? But she couldn't come home. The restraining order prohibited her from entering our house or accessing our joint accounts until a hearing could be scheduled. She was effectively homeless and penniless, at least temporarily. I knew she'd go straight to Jace, which was exactly what I wanted. Desperate people make desperate choices, and desperate choices leave evidence. Sure enough, my building surveillance contact, Tommy, called me that evening. Your friend's been busy, he said. That woman you asked me to watch for has been coming and going all day. Looks like she's moving stuff into the apartment. What kind of stuff? Suitcases, boxes, personal items. Looks like she's planning to stay for a while. Perfect. Cohabitation with a man who wasn't her husband while under a restraining order would not look good to a judge. But I wasn't done yet. Felix had been busy too, and what he'd discovered about Jace's business practices was even more interesting than I'd hoped. Your wife's boyfriend is quite the entrepreneur, Felix told me over coffee Monday morning. He's been running what amounts to a shell game with his consulting contracts, taking money from one client to pay another, billing for services never rendered, claiming business expenses that don't exist. Is that illegal? Extremely. I've already contacted the state attorney general's office. They're very interested in Mr. Arnell's creative accounting methods. What about Mira? She's in deeper trouble than she realizes. The Bar Association investigation has uncovered some interesting patterns in her billing. Seems she's been charging clients for work she was doing on Jace's behalf, using firm resources for personal matters, and falsifying time records. Can you prove it? Felix smiled and pulled out a thick folder. Your security system has been very helpful. All those recordings of them discussing business matters in your living room, planning their financial strategies, coordinating their schedules. It paints a very clear picture of conspiracy and fraud. I stared at the folder, amazed at how much evidence we'd accumulated. How long before this all comes out? The state investigation will take months, but the Bar Association moves faster. I expect Mira will be suspended within the week, pending a full disciplinary hearing. He was right. Mira's suspension came down on Wednesday, along with a notice that her law firm was conducting its own internal investigation. By Friday, she'd been placed on unpaid leave and banned from the office pending resolution of the ethics charges. Jace's situation was even worse. His 3 remaining clients had been contacted by investigators and discovered that the work they'd been paying for had never been completed. 2 of them filed complaints with the Better Business Bureau, and the 3rd threatened a lawsuit. Within a week, both of them were unemployed, under investigation, and running out of money fast. But I still wasn't satisfied. I wanted them to understand the full scope of what they'd lost, and I wanted our entire community to witness their downfall. That's where Mrs. Lacey became unexpectedly useful. Our neighborhood had a very active social media presence, with a Facebook group that served as an unofficial community bulletin board. Mrs. Lacey was one of the most active members, always posting about suspicious activities, local news, and neighborhood gossip. I started feeding her information, carefully and indirectly. A casual comment about seeing police cars at Jace's apartment building, a concerned observation about Mira staying out all night, innocent questions about legal troubles and their impact on property values. Mrs. Lacey took the bait and ran with it. Within days, the entire neighborhood was buzzing with speculation about the Ardells' marriage problems and Mira's legal troubles. The social pressure was enormous. Mira had built her reputation on being the successful, respectable lawyer who'd married beneath her station but made it work through determination and class. Now she was the subject of whispered conversations and pitying looks. She tried calling me several times, but I let the calls go to voicemail. Her messages started angry and demanding, then became pleading and desperate. "Trent, please, we need to talk. I know you're upset, but this has gone too far. People are saying terrible things about me, about us. Whatever you think I've done, we can work it out. Just call me back." I didn't call back. Instead, I went to visit my lawyer. "How much more evidence do we need?" I asked Felix. "For what purpose?" "I want a divorce, and I want her to walk away with nothing." "That's going to be difficult. Community property laws, spousal support. What if I can prove adultery, fraud, and conspiracy?" Felix leaned back in his chair, considering. "That would change things significantly. But we'd need ironclad proof, not just recordings and surveillance footage." "What kind of proof?" "Witnesses, financial records, documentation that clearly shows intent to defraud. The kind of evidence that would hold up in criminal court, not just divorce proceedings." I thought about that for a moment. "Give me another week." The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Jace's landlord had finally run out of patience and filed an eviction notice. The apartment building's management company was also investigating complaints about unauthorized long-term guests and potential lease violations. Mira was caught in an impossible situation. She couldn't go home because of the restraining order, couldn't afford a hotel indefinitely, and couldn't officially move in with Jace without violating multiple legal agreements. Desperation makes people reckless, and reckless people leave trails. I knew they were planning something when the audio surveillance picked up a heated argument about money. Mira was pressuring Jace to find a solution, and Jace was running out of options. "There has to be something we can do," Mira was saying. "Some way to access emergency funds." "Like what? You're cut off from your accounts, I'm broke, and we're both under investigation." "What about your business accounts? Surely there's something left." "Those are frozen too. The state attorney general made sure of that." "Then we need to be creative. There are ways to access money without going through traditional channels." That conversation was recorded on a Thursday evening. By Friday morning, they had apparently found their creative solution. Beck called me at work, his voice tight with excitement. "You need to see this," he said. "Your wife and her boyfriend just made the stupidest mistake of their lives." Beck's discovery was even better than I'd hoped. In their desperation to find money, Mira and Jace had attempted to access one of our joint credit cards through an online cash advance service. The transaction was flagged as suspicious and automatically declined, but not before creating a digital trail that clearly showed intent to commit fraud. More importantly, they'd done it from Jace's apartment, using his computer, while my security system recorded their entire conversation about the plan. "We've got them," Felix said when I played him the audio. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, violation of a restraining order. This is more than enough for criminal charges." "I don't want criminal charges," I told him. "I want something better." "What could be better than sending them to prison?" "Public humiliation, complete social destruction. I want everyone in this town to know exactly what kind of people they are." Felix raised an eyebrow. "That's more creative than prison. What did you have in mind?" I explained my plan. Felix listened, occasionally nodding or making notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "It's brilliant," he said finally. "Completely legal, utterly devastating, and perfectly timed. But are you sure you want to go this far? Once we do this, there's no going back." They made their choice when they decided I was too stupid to notice. Now they get to live with the consequences. The plan required precise timing and careful coordination. First, I needed to document one more meeting between Mira and Jace, preferably in a public place where witnesses could verify their relationship. I didn't have to wait long. Desperation had made them careless about being seen together. They met for lunch at the Riverside Cafe, our town's most popular restaurant, on a busy Saturday afternoon. I arrived early and took a table with a clear view of their booth. My phone was positioned to record video and audio, and I'd brought along a newspaper to hide behind. What I captured was perfect. 45 minutes of them discussing their financial problems, their legal troubles, and their plans to leave town together once the investigations were over. They talked about selling Mira's jewelry, accessing hidden accounts, and starting fresh somewhere else. Most importantly, they talked about me. "Trent's not as dumb as we thought," Mira admitted. "Somehow he figured out what was going on and turned it against us." "You think he's been watching us?" "I know he has. The restraining order, the investigations, the timing of everything. It's too coordinated to be coincidence. So what do? We disappear, take whatever money we can get and leave before this gets worse." "What about your career? Your reputation?" Mira laughed bitterly. "What career? What reputation? It's over, Jace. All of it. The only question now is whether we go down together or separately." I stopped recording and sat there for a moment, processing what I'd just heard. They were planning to run, which meant I had to move fast. That evening, I uploaded the restaurant recording to a secure server and sent copies to Felix, the state attorney general's office, and the Bar Association. Then, I prepared for the final phase of my plan. Sunday morning, I called Mrs. Lacey. "I need your help with something," I told her. "It's about Mira and the problems we've been having." "Of course, dear. What can I do?" "I want to set the record straight about what's been happening. Would it be possible to arrange a neighborhood meeting? Something informal, just so people can hear the truth instead of relying on gossip?" Mrs. Lacey was delighted. She'd been eager to hear the full story, and the chance to host a dramatic neighborhood gathering was impossible for her to resist. "I'll send out messages today," she said. "How about Tuesday evening? We can use the community center." "That would be perfect." I spent Monday preparing my presentation. Not just the evidence of the affair and the fraud attempts, but a complete timeline of their deception, documented with recordings, photographs, and financial records. Felix helped me organize it into a coherent narrative that told the story without revealing anything that might compromise future legal proceedings. "This is going to destroy them," he warned me one final time. "Their reputations, their careers, their social standing, none of it will ever recover." "Good," I said. "That's exactly what they deserve." Tuesday evening, the community center was packed. Word had spread quickly through the neighborhood about Trent Ardell's promised explanation of his marital troubles. Nearly 50 people showed up, including several of Mira's former colleagues and some of Jace's business associates. I'd expected a decent turnout, but the crowd exceeded my wildest hopes. Apparently, our drama had become the most interesting thing to happen in our quiet suburb in years. I started with a simple statement. "I asked Mrs. Lacey to organize this meeting because I want you all to hear the truth about what's been happening with my marriage. Some of you have heard rumors, and I think you deserve to know the facts." Then I began the presentation. I showed them the security footage of Mira and Jace entering our house together. I played selected audio recordings of their conversations about deceiving me. I displayed financial records showing their attempts to steal from our joint accounts. The room was completely silent. People sat transfixed as I methodically destroyed 2 reputations with nothing but documented facts and recorded evidence. "I want to be clear," I said as I concluded the presentation. "I'm not asking for sympathy or support. I'm simply sharing the truth about what these 2 people chose to do and letting you draw your own conclusions about their character." The silence stretched for nearly a minute after I finished. Then Mrs. Lacey stood up. "Trent," she said, "I think I speak for everyone here when I say how sorry we are that you've had to endure this betrayal, and how grateful we are that you've handled it with such dignity and restraint." The murmur of agreement that followed was music to my ears. But the evening wasn't over yet. As people were filing out of the community center, discussing what they'd just witnessed, Jace's BMW pulled into the parking lot. He and Mira got out of the car and walked toward the building, apparently unaware of what had just transpired inside. They must have seen the crowd and decided to investigate. The timing was perfect. They walked through the front door just as the last of the neighbors were leaving and found themselves face to face with 50 people who had just learned the intimate details of their affair and attempted fraud. The look on Mira's face was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. Pure horror, mixed with the dawning realization that her carefully constructed life had just collapsed in the most public way possible. Jace tried to salvage the situation. "What's going on here?" he demanded, as if he had any right to ask. "Community meeting," Mrs. Lacey replied sweetly. "Trent was just sharing some information about recent events in the neighborhood." Mira's eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, we stared at each other, and I saw her finally understand exactly how thoroughly she'd been outplayed. "You planned this," she whispered. "No," I replied calmly. "I just documented what you did and shared it with people who deserve to know the truth." She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could she say? That I was lying? Everyone had seen the evidence, that I was being unfair. She'd been caught committing fraud. Instead, she turned and walked out of the building, Jace trailing behind her like a whipped dog. I watched them go, feeling a sense of completion I hadn't experienced in months. The neighborhood crowd dispersed quickly, everyone eager to get home and start making phone calls about what they'd just witnessed. Within hours, the story would spread throughout our entire community. By morning, everyone would know exactly what kind of people Mira and Jace really were. Felix found me in the parking lot as I was getting into my truck. "Well," he said, "that was certainly thorough. It's not over yet." "What do you mean?" "They're going to run, probably tonight. But before they do, they're going to make one last mistake." I was right. My security system alerted me at 2:30 a.m. that someone was approaching the house. The cameras showed Mira and Jace creeping across the backyard, heading for the basement door. They were coming for something, probably documents or valuables they thought I wouldn't miss. It was exactly the kind of desperate, stupid decision I'd been counting on. I called the police and reported a break-in in progress. Then I called Felix. They just walked into the final trap, I told him. Breaking and entering, violation of a restraining order, attempted burglary. This should be enough to put them away for a while. Are you sure you want to press charges? I thought about it for a moment, watching on my phone as they fumbled with the basement door lock. No, I said finally. I want something better than prison. What's better than prison? I want them to live with what they've become. The police arrived just as Mira and Jace were entering the house. They were arrested, charged, and spent the night in jail before being released on their own recognizance. The local newspaper picked up the story. The arrest report became public record. Their mugshots were posted online. By the end of the week, both of them had left town. Mira's law license was suspended pending the resolution of criminal charges. Jace's business collapsed completely when his remaining clients learned about his legal troubles. They'd lost everything that mattered to them: their careers, their reputations, their social standing, their financial security. All because they'd underestimated the sweet but clueless husband who'd been smart enough to document their every move. I never saw either of them again. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that they'd moved to another state, where they were trying to rebuild their lives under the shadow of their disgrace. As for me, I kept the house, kept my job, and kept my dignity. The security system is still running, still recording everything, still protecting what's mine. And sometimes, late at night, I review the footage from that final confrontation at the community center, watching Mira's face as she realized she'd been beaten at her own game. It never gets old. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Mira signed the papers without contest, taking nothing but her personal belongings and the knowledge that she'd thrown away 15 years of marriage for a man who'd abandoned her the moment things got difficult. I heard she tried to practice law again in her new state, but the disciplinary action followed her. Professional misconduct has a way of haunting people in careers built on trust and reputation. Jace never recovered financially. His credit was ruined, his business reputation destroyed, and his personal relationships poisoned by the scandal. Last I heard, he was working retail and living in a studio apartment. They'd gambled everything on the assumption that I was too trusting, too stupid, and too weak to fight back. They'd lost that bet in the most spectacular way possible. And the best part? I'd done it all legally, methodically, and with perfect documentation. Every move I'd made was calculated, every piece of evidence was legitimate, and every consequence they'd suffered was the direct result of their own choices. They'd played a game they didn't understand against an opponent they'd underestimated. The outcome was inevitable from the moment I'd discovered that first security alert. I'd forgotten to tell my wife about the hidden cameras, and that oversight had cost her everything she'd worked for. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people destroy themselves while you watch.